Hi guys, Erin here. I'm going to be talking a little bit more today about the literature review. I know we've already done a fair amount of prep for this, so hopefully you're feeling pretty comfortable with it. So today I just want to talk about some of the rhetorical purposes of the literature review and just maybe give you a few more kind of final pointers, I guess. So you can see here we're looking at the syllabus. I just want to remind you that you can use the annotated bibliography as a resource for the lit review. I want to remind you that you need to make sure that your lit review is cohesive and that it's comprehensive, right? So you need to really convince me in this lit review that you know what you're talking about, right? You have done the research in your area and you are now an authority on it, right? You're an expert. You've done all the reading and you get it and you know what's out there and now you're qualified to make your own arguments, right? So this is really ultimately the rhetorical purpose of the literature review. I should say, I suppose, that there are two rhetorical purposes. One is to give your reader the background knowledge that they need to understand what you're going to say next, right? But perhaps even more importantly than that is to establish with your reader that you are an authority figure, right? This is all about enhancing your own credibility, making sure that you're going to be taken seriously and that you've done your homework and that it's clear that you've done your homework, right? So make sure that your literature review is comprehensive. The cohesive part is important as well, right? We talked a little bit earlier about organization, so make sure that you've given some thought to how you're organizing it, whether that's chronologically, thematically, whether you're organizing by maybe a couple of different methodologies that you're weaving together. There are a lot of different ways to organize your literature review, so you just want to make sure that you've done it in a way that makes sense for the paper that you're writing, okay? Notice here it says the number of resources you review will depend on your area. If you are in an area that not a lot of work has been done in, you may have a pretty short lit review, right? You may not have that many sources to cover. You may be pulling on resources from other areas just to prove that you've done some work here. You've looked around for resources and there just aren't any, that there's this gap in the literature, right, that you're filling in. And you should also, of course, be thinking about how the literature review is going to shape your methods. So at the point that you're writing this literature review, you should have in mind what methods you're going to be using down the road, because the theory, right, the theory that you've been developing all along based on your perspectives and your experiential knowledges, that theory is coming ever sharper into focus, and now you're starting to understand what sorts of methods will best support the arguments that you're going to be making. As always, I'm happy to look at drafts. If you're feeling nervous about the lit review, try to get it done early, send it ahead. If I can, I will be happy to look at a draft. Let me click over now, and I'm just going to show you, I'm going to run through one of the readings that we've already done in this course and talk through how this person managed a literature review. So I'm just going to go into the required readings folder, and the piece that I'm going to get is the piece by Angela Haas, my mentor, the person who taught me to write a good literature review. So I'm opening her article now, and you can see that I've already queued up the part where she really gets into a review of the literature, right? So in some articles, in some that we've read, and in some others hopefully that you're looking at, there will be a section explicitly called literature review. That's not the case here, right? This section on defining race, rhetoric, and technology, this is her literature review. This is where she says, these are the 3 key terms I'm working with. I have done extensive research onto these terms and how they're used in the fields that I'm concerned with, and now I'm going to tell you the most important things about what I found. She says that she's contextualizing her inquiry, right? And that is really the project of the literature review, to let the reader know, here's the context that this work is existing in. I am making these arguments because they are supported by these things. Sometimes you can say, I'm making these arguments because there's a gap, right? There's a gap in the literature. I've looked everywhere and there's nothing on X, so now I'm filling it in. Angela is using existing literature to support her work, and she's explaining how she defines these 3 key terms. And later in the article, right, she talks about how these definitions affect the way that she does things. As you run through here, notice that the format of these 3 different sections of her literature review, because she almost has 3 miniature lit reviews going on here, right? The 3 different sections are arranged differently, right? They have different organizations. So the defining race section leads off with Gilliard, and she contextualizes this scholar, right? We know that Gilliard is a language and literacy scholar. We know where this sort of understanding is coming out of, disciplinarily speaking. And then she introduces Smedley, who she relies on a lot, right? So Smedley is an African American studies scholar and anthropologist. Angela is contextualizing this for us. She's letting us know that this is somebody who has done considerable work on race and is indeed one of the foremost scholars on race. And as such, that's why Angela is grounding much of her understanding of race in what Smedley has to say. And you get this sense as you continue, right? You start to understand more and more that Smedley is very, very important because Angela keeps working with her. She's very, very important to the way that Angela is understanding and defining race in this article. She comes back to Gilliard again, so you can see her organization has a little bit more to do with theme than with, talking about a particular author and then leaving them. It's not a kiss off, right? She keeps on coming back and interweaving these different ideas. She invokes Victor Villanueva, who is somebody pretty important to cite, right, if you're talking about race in TechCom. So she's done her homework here. She knows who she's supposed to cite. She's letting us know that she knows what she's talking about. Um, so you get through this kind of race section, and then you get into, and notice how long this is, right? This is clearly her main key term. This is the part that's most important to her because you can see she spends significant time with it before she gets to rhetoric. Now, there are a couple of reasons that the rhetoric section isn't quite that long. So, to remind you, the rhetoric section just goes for a little more than a page, really. The rhetoric section isn't that long for a couple of reasons. Number one, because she doesn't have as much groundwork to lay, right? She knows her audience. She knows that this is appearing in JBTC and that people who read JBTC already know a thing or two about rhetoric, whereas they probably needed a little more help theorizing race. So she can leave a little bit more of the work here to the reader. Notice also that she organizes this section in a little bit of a different way, right? She makes use of some different formatting to help the reader move through a significant amount of content quickly. She uses terms like in some because she knows she can get away with that even at this early point in this section of the lit review. In some, rhetoric is always already cultural. Here's some more interesting formatting that helps people move quickly through this information, right? And then, boom, she's very quickly done. So I think that that's an interesting case study for you to refer to as you're thinking about how to organize your literature review, because even just in the context of this one article, you can see two different sort of approaches to organizing a lit review. The technology section I'm not going to spend a lot of time on because I didn't want to make you listen to another very long video, but it's set up a little bit more like the race section, probably because there are some competing narratives about what technology means in the field at this point. So you should take a look at that too. It also helps to situate the rest of the article so that you can understand maybe a little bit better how her methods come out of her methodology and theory. The last thing I will point out to you is that this whole article is about a course she taught, right? The work comes out of a course that she taught in race, rhetoric, and technology. And I have included in the recommended reading section a a sample annotated bibliography. So you may be drawing some connections here, and I just wanted to point them out in case you hadn't noticed them, that this course that this article here is talking about is a course that I was in as a student. And that sample annotated bibliography that you see in the recommended readings folder is the annotated bibliography I produced for this course. So I keep talking about context, right, and asking you to supply context. So I wanted to supply a little bit for you there, and hopefully that maybe helps you see some connections and understand a little bit about how literature reviews and annotated bibliographies sort of interact with each other.